this is gonna work for me. If it doesn't, then whatever. I had nothing when I started this business. No contacts in the industry, no family in the business. I'm very stubborn. So like if I latch onto an idea, like I need to learn the hard way if it's not gonna work. Okay, I'm gonna share here, but this is the first time I've kind of spoken about this publicly. By the time I was in my late teens and early 20s, like I was like a full-blown alcoholic. Kicked out of my parents' house. I'd burned a lot of bridges with friends, like nobody really wanted to hang out with me anymore. And I was just kind of like sitting in rooming houses, just drinking all the time. That went on for a while, and one day I just woke up and, you know, I kind of reached this point where it was like, I can give myself a shot at having a good life, because I knew that I had potential. Everything kind of came together at the right time. It wasn't, oh, I'm gonna be a jeweler and I can make a jewelry business out of this. It was just that like, maybe there's something here, you know, but I'm pursuing this to the very end and I don't have a plan B.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Tool for Rise podcast, aka the #1 podcast in Winnipeg, where we document the rise and stardom of Winnipeg's talent and personalities. Like I said, the last episode, the locations have been changing and they're going to continue changing.
And the guests keep changing too. They keep getting bigger. So please welcome private jeweler, probably the best jeweler in Winnipeg.
Stop.
The owner of KPS Jewellers, Kiran Shukle.
Hey, round of applause.
So yeah, I guess I need to say a little bit about myself.
No, brother, first of all, thank you for letting us in your cave. Thank you for letting us in your office.
Welcome to my cave. Yeah,
Great spot, first of all.
Boys.
Yeah,
great spot.
We got the city right behind us. Like it's.
Can watch the Gold Ice game
from here.
From here, yeah.
Free tickets, yo. That's crazy.
What's it like being up here? What's it like being up here when you look down and you see the city? What do you think of?
Well, so like the when I first walked into this office, right, to view it, because I was looking for office space to meet clients, and like the view is what sold it. Same thing with where I live right now. Like I feel like the view really kind of sets the tone and the mood in a room, you know, and if you have like an impressive view, it kind of offers maybe a more of a higher end feel, right? So I don't know. That's just me personally.
Okay.
I do have some customers that come in here though and are terrified of heights, and like I'll have to close the blinds. Like I did one giveaway on Instagram, and I've never met her before. She's never bought anything off me, but she won. She found like a chain, and she came to pick it up, and she walked in. Nope. And then walked right out, and I had to like go bring her the chain in the hallway.
Damn.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. I didn't really take that into consideration when I picked.
Are you scared of heights?
No.
Okay. Nice.
Or else we probably wouldn't.
Yeah, we wouldn't be
have
done
this.
Yeah.
Man, just me personally being in this room, if this was my personal office, this would be the biggest accomplishment, because, you know, coming from a background of where, you know, we didn't have a lot growing up. And being able to be on the top of the city, quite literally, have the nice view, and now you're chasing your dreams. What does that feel like?
I mean, I don't often like kind of sit back and reflect that much. Once in a while I do, but I feel like, you know, a characteristic of mine that's also, you know, it can be kind of a double-edged sword, is that like I'm always striving for kind of the next level and what we can do to improve, right? It's never... Very rarely do I kind of sit and say, you know, wow, good job, Kiran, right? It's always like, okay, you know, we've accomplished this, but what can we do to keep it moving, right? Like, how can we reach the next level, right? So.
What do you do, Kiran? Why are we here right now?
Why are we here? Well, my name is Kiran, and I own KPS Jewelry. We're kind of a little bit different than your traditional jewelry store, right? We operate on like an appointment-only basis. As you can see, we just have like an office here where we meet clients, and we kind of do everything from, you know, your big hip-hop style jewelry to watches and kind of fine jewelry, bridal, ladies' pieces. So,
wow.
Yeah.
What got you into this industry? Like, jewelry is a tough market, right?
Yeah, it's a tough business for sure.
Probably required a lot of capital to start up.
That it did not. For me, actually, yeah.
Okay.
I had nothing when I started this business. I mean, okay, when I started selling jewelry, I didn't really ever imagine it would kind of blossom into what it has grown into today, right? I was always a little bit entrepreneurial as a kid. You know, I started my own lawn mowing business, and when they took soda out of the vending machines in middle school, we like went and bought a 24 pack at Costco and like put it in an empty locker and sold it at lunch, right? I was always kind of like, I always knew I wanted to be my own boss. Yeah. And yeah, I kind of trailed off a little bit there, but getting into the jewelry, so I had just moved to Winnipeg, and I've always been very into kind of fashion, and you know, do you guys remember when Ed Hardy was cool?
Sorry.
Is that before your time, the Jersey Shore days?
That's not me, but our producer Devin, he knows what he's talking about.
So Ed Hardy it's the tackiest shit ever, right? But it was super cool and in, and I mowed lawns for a whole summer so I could go buy a Ed Hardy t-shirt. So I've always been very dedicated to like, you know, current trends in fashion or whatever. Anyways, I was here and I had, you know, I think $1,200 to my name, and I wanted to go buy some jewelry. And I went to a few stores here. There's only a couple places you can kind of go to get kind of the men's hip hop style jewelry, right? Yeah. And I went there, and what they were charging was like way more than you could get it back in Ontario where I grew up, right? So me being a cheap ass was like, absolutely not. So I went to a pawn shop on Sargent. It's called AMC Pawn. It's like right in the hood. I didn't know it was the hood. I just walked there, right? And yeah, I went and I bought a couple of rope chains, impulse buy like a donkey, and then 2 weeks later I was broke and I had to pay rent. I'm like, well, I have these chains, right? So I put them on Kijiji because there was no marketplace at the time, and I sold them. I can't remember exactly if it was like a few hours or, you know, maybe the next day, but I sold it like very quickly and I made a couple $100.
Okay.
But the kicker was the guy who I sold them to, he was like, if you can get jewelry cheaper than these other places, me and all my friends will buy from you. Because I kind of played it off like, smart. I sell things here and there. I didn't let him know that like, I need money for rent, right? But that kind of like made the light bulb go off in my head. Like, maybe there's something here, you know? It wasn't, oh, I'm going to be a jeweler and I can make a jewelry business out of this. It was just that like, maybe I'll go back to the pawn shop and get some more chains, right? Yeah.
What was it like when you walked into that pawn shop and you saw, and then the person bought after?
After?
Yeah. Like, how long from that point to where you're like, oh, I'm going to do this?
Well, I went back to the pawn shop almost immediately.
Really?
After I paid the rent and, I started working. My uncle, he owns a East Indian restaurant here. So I worked there for a little bit, washing dishes, and, just saved up a little bit of my money, and I would go back to the pawn shop. You know, that place didn't have too much at the time, right? But I'd kind of... See, the jewelry business is the barrier for entry, or at least I thought at the time, was like, it was very difficult, right? Okay. The probability of me becoming a jeweler with $1,000 to my name, no contacts in the industry, no family in the business, right? Is slim to none.
Hard to, yeah.
So after I had that first success with that initial pawn shop, I kind of started just going everywhere. I would take the bus to all these different pawn shops, and there was a few gold buyers, and there was this guy in McPhillips who owned like a coin and stamp store, and he had like pre-owned jewelry there. And I would just go there and essentially give them a proposition like, hey, if I can come in here every week and buy X amount, can you give me like a little bit of a discount, right? And most places said like, yeah, there's the door, buddy. Like, you know, I wasn't dealing with substantial capital. We're talking a few $1,000s this time, right?
Okay.
But there was a few people who did, who were on board with that. And that's kind of how I got my inventory at first.
So selling and then buying, that became your job, right?
Essentially. I mean, like I was working, I bounced around between a couple different jobs. And I was going to actually finish my high school at the time. Because I'd never finished when I was younger. Because I got into a lot of trouble when I was a kid. And kind of other things came in the way and I wasn't able to complete my diploma. But anyways, yeah. Sorry, what was your question?
It was like, because going from Facebook Market, getting an idea of
Kijiji. Sorry. Pre-Facebook Market.
Sorry, man, I'm a 2000s kid.
No, it's all good, man.
Different times. But having that idea be lit up in your mind that, okay, maybe if I just sell, like I can make money off of this. This is actual business now.
Right.
But going from that idea and putting into place, it's a completely different story.
Absolutely.
Like understanding, hey, like maybe I gotta go to the pawn shops. I gotta do door knocking, right? I gotta convince this person that I have nothing, but I want everything.
Right.
How did you play that? Like, how did you get that into reality? Like, to where we are now?
To where we are now,
right?
It's been quite the journey, and that's the thing. Like, there's no like overnight success, right? It kind of just compounds. Consistency is the biggest thing. But I don't really know how to answer that, man. It was just literally just one foot in front of the other. Like, I'm very stubborn. So like if I latch onto an idea, like I need to learn the hard way if it's not going to work, right?
Gotcha.
So I just kind of stuck with it, and it was working, right? Like, I mean, it was a grind. Sometimes, you know, you spend $1,200 on a piece of jewelry to make $50, but like, that's $50 when you're broke, like, you know, right? So, and in my mind too, like, the more people I sold to, the more potential clients I had in the future.
Right.
Right? So.
So you were flipping jewelry, basically.
Flipping jewelry at first,
right?
yeah.
You'd buy it at a certain price and then sell it at a higher price and keep the profit.
Exactly.
From there.
I kind of learned, you know, the range of like what you can kind of buy it from. Like with gold, right, there's a very strong residual value. There's like a market price for gold everywhere, right? But that's just your raw gold. Now you have to factor in the labor that it takes to build certain pieces, right? And then the markup for new jewelry. So I knew that if I could buy it at X amount above the base metal price, I could probably sell it for this, which was, you know, 40-50% under what the jewelry stores were selling it for, and I would be able to make like a little bit for myself, right?
Yeah.
At what point did you realize that, hey, like I don't want to work at my uncle's Indian restaurant anymore? This is where I can scale up and, you know, probably take over the city with my jewelry business.
So I don't think by the time I'd quit working, I actually wasn't working at my uncle's restaurant when I came to that point where I quit. I was working at Ichiban, like, you know, the teppanyaki house. Yeah, I was bussing tables there. So, but essentially it had gotten to the point where, I mean, I'm going to work and the pay for being a busboy is not great. And you're kind of like, you know, you're the schlep of the restaurant. You're running around like crazy for 8 hours at a time. So I kind of figured that my time would be, you know, better spent focusing on something else. And also I started dating this girl and she was kind of annoyed that I had to go to work every night and she had to come pick me up at 9. I didn't have a car or a license or anything, right? So it was kind of like, okay, well, you know, I'm really not making that much money here. Like I can probably just focus on doing this. Cause I was making, at that point, I was making more money per month flipping jewelry than I was, you know, making minimum wage plus like $5 in tips, right? So
I'm gonna ask you to think of like a story from the first couple of times when you were flipping. Do you remember like the feeling when you were like, oh, like I just made profit here? Like,
yeah,
was
there's
that
a few feelings I can remember. Like obviously, you know, the feeling of your ideas working and succeeding is like, it's like a rush. It's exhilarating. You know what I mean? It's this dopamine rush and you feel like, yeah, I'm so cool. I know what I'm doing, right? Like you kind of get a little bit of that, but then there's also like the flip side of, okay, I'm in a city where I don't know anybody because I wasn't born and raised here. And I'm going to, like, I was hungry to make deals. I would go in on a bus at 10 p.m. and go meet somebody at a lounge down by Polo Park. Like I had no clue who I was meeting. So there's like, in the back of my mind, there's the anxiety of I might be going and getting robbed, right? Like that was like a real possibility all the time.
True.
And people did try. There was actually 2 times where I got bear mace. And the reel we made about me getting bear mace actually happened. I got bear mace twice. So
Wow.
What's that story?
Okay, well the first one, and you know, you kind of learn things as you go, and this was a very important lesson for me to learn, right? So this guy messages me on, again, Kijiji. It was like a $4,000 or $5,000 chain, right? And he's like, yeah, I'll take that. What other jewelry do you have? And I'm sending him, I had maybe like a couple of rings and maybe one more necklace, right? And he's like, okay, how much for all of them? I gave him a price and he said, yeah, I'll take those too. He's like, actually just bring like whatever you have and like I'll take a look at everything. And in my mind, I'm like,
Ding,
dude, I'm about to make a couple grand off this, right?
Yeah.
So I'm all excited and he's like, let's meet at the Rexall on Maryland and Portage. Looking back at it now, I'm like, you fucking idiot, right? Yeah. But I was like, let's go. Put my backpack on. I was wearing the chain and I pull up and this young kid comes up and, you know, introduces himself or whatever. Yeah. And then he's like, you know, let's go around the side of the building so we can count the money. Like he had a pretty heavy accent. He's like, immigration's right there. Like, I don't want the cops to come and see the cash or whatever. And I'm like,
Bro,
what?
Yeah,
all right, man,
okay.
like whatever, you know? So we go around to the side of the building and there was like 5 of his friends there. And that's when I was like,
shit.
Yeah, it's about that time. So like I just kind of put the chain in my shirt and...
Put the hands up, eh?
No, they were like, yo, where's your stuff? Where's your stuff? I had also brought like a Louis Vuitton belt with me because I was kind of at the same time I was flipping clothing too.
Yeah.
And they were like, let me see it. Like, let me see the chain. And I'm like, wow, guys, I need to see some money. Like, this is a lot of valuables we're talking about here. He's like, what? You don't think we have money? And he pulled out $50 out of his pocket. That's when I knew, like, oh, I'm fucked here. And then I just feel a hand grab me here, and I turn and look at the guy, and he has like a can of bear mace in my face. I've never seen a can of bear mace in my life. Like in Ottawa, like people don't rob people with bear mace, right? So
only a Manitoba thing.
I'm looking at the guy, and I'd only been in Winnipeg for like 2 months. I'm like, what the fuck is that silly string? Like, I don't understand what's going on. You think I'm gonna give you this chain for that? And he's just pretty much just like, yeah, give me all your shit. Ooh. And no. So I just pushed him, and he just started spraying me in the face with the bear mace, and like it doesn't hit you instantly. So I'm like walking away, and he's like following me and spraying me. All of his friends took off.
Oh my God.
And like maybe 10 seconds later, like it really starts to burn. So I just sprint into the Rexall. Mind you, it's probably like 3 p.m. So it's like busy in there.
Yeah.
And I just collapsed on the floor in the Rexall, like screaming at the top of my lungs. They didn't get anything.
Yeah.
But I got bear maced pretty bad. I went to the hospital because security there called the ambulance. Like, yeah, it was pretty excruciatingly painful to get bear maced, man. Yeah.
And the next day you're like, I'm going back to work?
Pretty much. Yeah. I was a little more cautious though, right? If there was no negotiation happening, I was very, very, paranoid about like, am I getting robbed again or
What business lesson did you learn from that? Even though it's pretty obvious, but for the audience.
If it's too good to be true, it probably is, and that's a lesson I've learned a few times, right? But I think like because of my stubborn personality and maybe sometimes being a bit too eager to make a deal happen, that I failed to take certain precautions or safety measures that would have kind of protected me. But
what do you think that stems from? Like, is it we're always chasing that next big thing? Are you trying to prove something, or you have a chip on your shoulder to prove, or what?
No, I'm just like at this point in my life, like I was just very hungry to make deals happen. You know, like I'd kind of over a small period of time seen something. There was a long period of my life before that where kind of nothing was really going my way. I was kind of having a rough time, and during these few months, like I'd started to see one of my ideas like start to work and kind of bloom into something positive. So I really wanted to keep pursuing that. And like I said, I'm also very stubborn, right? Mm-hmm. So, there was people who told me, who I was friends with at the time, like, hey man, you shouldn't be going to, McDonald's and EK to meet a guy to sell him a chain. Like gonna get robbed. Yeah. And I was like, no, they're not gonna rob me. Like it's all good. I know what I'm doing, right? Yeah. Did not know what I was doing, but yeah. I don't know if that answered your question.
Yeah, no,
but,
it does, because a lot of people, they can take the easy route out, right? They can go to school and go to that 9 to 5 and they're set. But you're choosing to chase an idea that you think is going to work and trying to prove that to yourself, but also your family. It's a different story.
Family was the tough part. And I mean, I think the self-doubt is something that kind of every entrepreneur has to go through.
Right.
Like it's hard, man. Like, I feel like the internet really glamorizes being an entrepreneur and owning your own business. And you have all this freedom and, maybe you make all this money, but people don't see like the dark side to it, right? Like the nights of self-doubt and when things go wrong and cash flow problems and how am I going to pay for this? Like, can I really do this? On the slow months where you're not making any money because you're not guaranteed anything, right? Yeah. Is this even going to work? Like, am I going to fail, right? All these things kind of run in your mind. And also like, I'm sure you guys know the vibes. My dad is East Indian. So, there's 3 options as a child, right? Doctor, lawyer, engineer. If I'm not one of those, I'm a failure. Yeah. And then having to kind of explain to my dad why, I was choosing to maybe pursue this, which really had no real substance at this point. It was me selling chains on Kijiji, right? It wasn't a business, you know? Instead of pursuing a law degree or whatever, was tough for the first few years. And like a lot of my friends, like they kind of like laughed at me too, right? I don't think a lot of people took me seriously. So yeah.
What was it like convincing them? Because I'll agree with you. We're in a very similar spot, especially for myself. When you're like, I believe in this so much that I'm willing to look you in the face and say I can do this. But then at the end of the day, that's my mom. That's my family. That's someone who's brought me to where I am today, and I'm here because of that person. And to be able to look that person in the eye and say, I know you're worried, but I got this.
Right.
What is that like? And why didn't you quit when they said you should?
Well, to answer that one, I never did well with people telling me what to do and authority. Being bossed around, if someone told me to, you have to do this, I'd be like, well, I should probably do it the other way, right? Convincing them, like the only way you can really convince, at least personally me, the only way I could convince my dad was through action, right? it didn't really matter what I told him or whatever. But, you know, as soon as, you know, I had a company set up and, you know, we had an office and, you know, a social media that looked manicured and professional, that's when I think he started to realize like, oh, okay, you know, maybe my son is onto something here.
Was it hard during those moments when like between that period of, okay, I'm legit and the just starting off?
Yeah, absolutely.
And what do you tell yourself? Or what do you feel? What do you feel during that time?
You know, you get the periods of self-doubt there, right? But kind of like how you spoke about, you know, your opinion on what you're doing, right? Like I was of the same opinion. Like this is going to work for me. If it doesn't, then whatever. But I'm pursuing this to the very end and I don't have a plan B. I think maybe having a plan B, if you want to be an entrepreneur and start a business, is probably like the worst thing you can do, right? Because you're kind of leaving that door open that if I fail, you know, I'll have something else to do, right? Instead of, I feel like your mindset should be, this is going to work, I'm going to accomplish this, and I'm going to do whatever is in my power to make this happen, right? So.
Yeah. Were you always like that as a kid? Like you said that you know, in high school you were like flipping like the
middle school,
middle school.
Yeah.
You were flipping and sodas and like trying to hustle money here and there. Were you always like that? Like where do you think that stemmed from?
Like having kind of a go-getter?
The go-getter, the entrepreneurship.
I think so.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, when I was younger, like my parents, you know, they never really gave me any handouts. I played hockey and yeah, I don't know if you guys are aware, but the hockey equipment is pretty expensive, especially like the high-end stuff, right?
Yeah.
And all the guys on my team, the parents were buying them like fancy new sticks and whatever, and I really wanted a expensive hockey stick. It was like one of the first years I played competitive hockey. My dad said, well, you can buy it yourself.
Yeah.
So I had to mow lawns and save up enough money to buy my own hockey stick. And that taught me a really valuable lesson because when I went in to buy the stick, I'd saved up maybe $300. There was the brand new, it was the Bauer 190 for like $219, or there was like 3-year-old model for $90. I ended up just taking the cheaper one because I'm like, do I really need the more expensive one? So I was kind of taught those lessons about money earlier on, and I kind of knew that like, if I want certain things in life, it's not just going to get given to me, right? Like I have to put the footwork in to make it happen myself. Right.
That's where you realize the power of money and the value of earning it yourself.
Yeah,
I would say, right? Like, for example, for myself, I worked at Cineplex. And beforehand, I would always ask my parents when I was a kid, like, yo, buy me, I was into soccer. And so I wanted like the professional cleats, like they're like $250, $300, right? Brown parents, they're like, yo, let's go to Sport Check, $60 or less, anything, you pick it up.
Yeah, exactly.
And so I was like, I never really understood why. And then I go to Cineplex and I'm like busting my ass off, picking up garbage, right? Taking it out, having the juice spill all over me just to make $11 an hour. And then I go and buy.
Yeah, you're buying the $60 cleats. You're not spending 40 hours of your life on
40 hours just to be able to afford shoes.
Right.
That's where I'm like, okay, I think I know what they're talking about. But now you're doing it at a bigger scale, right?
Right.
You have everything against you, but also that's probably the best way to grow, would you say? Is when you have nothing, you just kind of shoot for the moon and land in the stars?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, when I started this, right, I was kind of at a point in my life where like I didn't really have much going on.
Yeah.
You know? So it was kind of like, okay, I'm going to put a real effort into this. And if it doesn't work out, then I guess I can pursue something else. But it's not like I had other obligations or like, you know, I had the opportunity to go and do a degree at a university that, you know, was kind of impeding on me pursuing this. It was kind of just all my eggs in one basket, essentially, right?
Did you know where you could take it when you started that Kijiji sale like that? From that first Kijiji sale to where you've developed it now? Did you know that?
No.
Okay.
I mean, it was a dream. Like eventually, after I had some initial success with selling jewelry, you know, I'd say, oh man, like, you know, I'd love to own a jewelry store one day. I'd love to be like a jeweler, like who people go to, right?
Yeah.
And but I always thought it was kind of a little bit of a pipe dream. Because my perception about the jewelry business was that, okay, you need millions of dollars of capital to start, which in most cases you need maybe not that much, but substantial amount of money. And a lot of people in the jewelry business, it's all passed down through the generations. It's all family run, mostly, if you look at it, right? So I'm sitting there, I'm broke. My parents work for the government. Like, you know, they're public servants. They're not jewelers or, you know, entrepreneurs themselves. So, like, what angle do I really have here, right? So.
Why did you stumble on Winnipeg?
Why did I stumble on Winnipeg?
Yeah.
That's a That's a story, man. So, okay, I'm going to share here, but this is the first time I've kind of spoken about this publicly. So I grew up, born and raised in Ottawa. I grew up there, and growing up, I was a pretty high achieving child. Like I was, I got straight A's in school, and I played competitive sports, and I was like a very, polite, well-mannered kid. And when I got to high school, I just kind of fell in with the wrong crowd and developed the wrong habits, and I started smoking weed really early, like really young, and skipping class, and it kind of blossomed into like a full-blown addiction by the time I was in my late teens and early 20s. Like I was like a full-blown alcoholic. And at that point in my life, towards the end of my using career, we'll call it, I was kicked out of my parents' house. I'd burned a lot of bridges with friends. Like nobody really wanted to hang out with me anymore. I was broke. I hadn't completed high school, and I was just kind of like sitting in rooming houses, just drinking all the time, right? Like I had a pretty bad drinking problem. It was like to the point of, I'm waking up in the morning, like shaking, like I need to drink to like kind of get through the day, right? Like, cause it was like to the point of physical withdrawals, right?
Damn.
And that went on for a while. And one day I just woke up and, I kind of reached this point where it was like, if I carry on like this, I'm going to either kill myself or end up dead anyways, because I was slowly killing myself through booze. Or, I can give myself a shot at having a good life, because I knew that I had potential, right? And that was the toughest thing going through my addiction, was that I knew I had potential, right? Like, I know I can achieve and excel in school, right? I know, like, I have good ideas when it comes to, money-making business ventures or whatever, right? Like I can make something of myself, right? This is not how I'm not gonna go out sad like this, right?
Yeah.
So it was, gonna either kill myself, end up dead, or I can give myself a shot. So I called my mom, and I told her, like, look, I need help, right? And she made a couple of phone calls, and she found this treatment center it's in Gimli. It's kind of like an hour outside of the city.
Okay.
She said there's this treatment center there. They have a detox there, because I needed to be have a supervised medical detox to come off the liquor.
Sure.
And if you're on a plane, you can go tomorrow. Because I couldn't get into any treatment centers in Ottawa. The waiting lists are crazy long for publicly funded treatment centers. It's insane.
Wow.
Yeah. And the detox in the Ottawa hospital wouldn't take me. So that was kind of my only option if I wanted to sober up like that, right? And I couldn't go 8 hours without having a drink. So I was like, yeah, sure. Why not?
How'd you come to that decision that you wanted to change?
Immense amounts of pain.
Really?
Yeah.
Damn.
Addiction is, I wouldn't wish it on my worst enemy. It's a horrible, horrible thing to go through. It's a very dark, lonely, miserable existence, right?
Yeah.
Because you're stuck. It's a little kind of like a ball and chain situation, right? I'd wake up in the morning and I'm not drinking today. Like, we're gonna kick it today, right? But then the physical and the mental aspect kicks in, and by the time, if I woke up around 8 and I start to get sick by the time it's noon, it's excruciatingly painful, right? Like, you're shaking, anxiety, like you're sweating, you can't keep water down, like it's terrible, terrible, terrible feeling. But you have this voice in the back of your head that's like, if you just have a drink, like you'll feel better.
Yeah.
So it's really tough to power through that, and that's why I say it's one of the worst things ever, because it's like it's a constant revolving door of hell, right? You wake up and this is not what I want with my life, but you can't help it, right? It's tough. Yeah.
That's a powerful story, man. And first of all, thank you for sharing.
Yeah,
sharing
absolutely.
it publicly. Like, it's not easy to talk about. But I want to go back to the idea of where you said you see that potential in yourself, but yet you're completely going against it, right?
Right.
You were a higher achiever in school. You were athletic. You had that life balance, and now you're going the other way. Trying to convince yourself that, hey, like, in addiction, there's that part of me that I know can go through. Talk about the self-doubt, but then overcoming that self-doubt to see the light at the end of the tunnel.
Well, I mean, I think the self-doubt and kind of the self-loathing with addiction, it kind of compounds, right? as the snowball continues to get bigger and bigger, and you kind of become more and more submerged in the problem, your perception of yourself worsens, right? It took a while, man, you know, but when I first sobered up, it was like just doing the little things, right? Because I had kind of, for lack of better terms, been a degenerate for, you know, 7 or 8 years of my life, right? So now I'm doing things that make me a responsible adult, right? I'm going and paying for my own groceries. I'm paying for my own rent, right? Like I'm holding a job. Like I'm able to keep up with my responsibilities. I'm not bailing on people to go get drunk or high or missing the family functions and just full of shame from my actions, right? Like I'm accomplishing things, relatively small things, but I'm starting to make progress, right? And it's those little steps of progress that kind of build back up your self-esteem. And to be honest, getting involved in the jewelry flipping, that was right around the time when I was sobering up, actually. So I went to the treatment center, and then I moved into what was called sober living house. So it's essentially like, imagine like a rooming house, right? But everybody is sober, right? And you have to abide by these rules. You have to, you know, go to a meeting, and you have to hold a job down, and you have to make your bed, and you have to piss clean, right?
Yeah.
That's essentially the premise of it. So I was living there, and that's when I sold my first chain, was when I was living there. Yeah.
As someone who said that you don't do well with authority and like having people telling you what to do, what was it like living in that sober house when people are like, you have to do this, you can't do that? What was that?
I did not get along with the guy who ran it. Good guy. His name was Wayne, but yeah, he was a very bossy, like he had a super deep voice, and he would just kind of yell at you. And yeah, man, that was tough. But you're in a position where you're like, okay, you know, my actions over the past 7 or 8 years absolutely decimated my own life, right? So maybe it's time that, you know, I realize Kiran doesn't know everything, and it's time to take some direction from other people, right? So
Everything that happened in my life, it's because of me.
yeah, absolutely.
Like, what was that like for you?
100% self-inflicted.
Yeah.
I mean, I think I just compounded with the shame of it all, right?
Yeah.
Because
Like, who do you blame?
I didn't really have an excuse,
Yeah.
right? Like I
Yeah.
met a lot of people in treatment who, you know, they're born to very unfortunate circumstances, you know, abusive homes or,
Yeah.
you know, that type of thing. And then I can understand, right? You grew up in a really negative environment like that. Like all I had growing up, I came from a good family. Like we weren't rich, we weren't poor. Like, you know, I just had a father who was like very, very, you know, put a lot of pressure on me to excel in life. That was it, you know, and this is what I've done with that pressure, right? So it's kind of, it was embarrassing, right? You know, and I was kind of hesitant to speak about this topic a little bit today because I feel like with addiction, there's such a big stigma around it, you know? But I guess I did want to touch on it a bit because I want people to know that like your past does not define you, right? You are not your past, right? You're able to grow and change from it, and you shouldn't be ashamed, you know, of the mistakes you've made in your life, right? It's all part of the process.
And this is the true effort of what you've done over the years, right? Like you've battled your worst demons to get to the spot that you are in right now.
Essentially, yeah.
What does that feel like?
I mean, like I said, man, like I'm pretty hard on myself, right? So it's, you know, very rarely do I stop and give myself a pat on the back, you know, and I think part of that is how I was raised, right? It was always, you know, it's never good enough. You can always do better, right? And I feel like that mentality has been hammered into my head. But there's times where it feels good, you know, especially when I have feedback from, you know, friends from back home or other family members, and they're kind of like, well, you know, wow, you've accomplished so much, you've came so far. And I stop and think, and you know, once in a while you got to stop and smell the roses, right? And then I can feel like a little bit proud of myself, but not for too long, because we always have to, always got to keep going, right?
Yeah, we talked briefly before we started recording here, but those are the moments that got you to where you are today, right? The way, the things that everyone goes through, even minor or major, those are what lead you to where you are today. They make you the person you are, the way that you act, the way you interact with people. And I want to commend you on your journey as well, because there's a lot of people who may not have made that call to their mom or to the person that they care, or may not even had that realization, and that maybe just listening to this is enough for them to be like, okay, there's something there, right? And I commend you on that, right? Because it's not easy to look and tell people that, yo, listen, I messed up. I was not in the spot that I was.
No, absolutely.
Right? It's not easy at all. And especially the way that you run your business here and the success that you've had. Respect, brother.
Appreciate it, man. Thank you. I appreciate it. Yeah.
So going from after flipping, right? When did the idea become, okay, I'm going to be a real jeweler now and I'm going to do jewelry as a whole? I'm going to take on this jewelry market.
So when I quit working at Ichiban, Blessing Tables, I was seeing this girl, and that was right around the time that COVID hit, right? So by this point in time, I'd been doing it for a few years, you know, and I had amassed a reasonable group of clients, maybe a handful of guys, right, that were buying kind of regularly. And COVID hit, so I couldn't go to the adult high anymore because that was shut down. It was all online, right? Couldn't work really anymore. And she had seen me have some kind of success with it, and she was actually one of the ones who really pushed it. She was like, "Oh, you should make an Instagram. You should make an Instagram and, you know, try and, like, you know, make a business out of this." And I had a few other friends that said, "I don't know why you're wasting your time doing this other stuff, man. I think you should just focus on this." And it was kind of that I said, "Okay, yeah, we'll try it out," right? And yeah, we made an Instagram, and it was a little slow at first, but then once all the real lockdown stuff started happening, everything kind of came together at the right time. I did some deals with some people who kind of, you know, opened up the floodgates to different connections. And that coupled with, you know, everybody was locked in their house. You couldn't go to the mall because it wasn't essential shopping or whatever that was, right?
Yeah.
So people were just on their phones, and I would just post jewelry on my story, and it was just like every day, like I couldn't keep stuff in stock, right? And it was pretty crazy. Like I was just selling it. I was taking her car, and she was yelling at me because I'm always gone with the car, meeting people everywhere. Like I didn't have my own car. I didn't have an office. I was just meeting people at, you know, this Starbucks or Tim Hortons or McDonald's parking lot. And actually a friend of mine, like, shout out to my guy Pete, his family, they own City Jewellers.
Yeah.
And he actually let me meet people in his store for the longest time, which was cool because I had no credibility. Who am I, right? Why am I going to trust this random guy to purchase a $5,000 piece of jewelry? I don't even know if it's what he says he is.
True, yeah.
Right? So like we would meet, you know, at some jewelry stores, and a lot of times we would meet at the City Jewellers location there, and he would like allow me to do the deal, or he would like test the gold or whatever, which was like super cool of him, right?
Yeah.
How did you overcome that hurdle of, you know, telling people that, hey, I am who I am. Like, this is authentic. Like, this is
just
legit.
by doing good business. Good business and word of mouth. That's like been such a huge driving factor for like attracting new clients.
Yeah.
Right? Because if he bought something off me and he had a great experience and he got a good deal or whatever, and he went and told you, well, now you're not really going to be questioning it as much, right?
Right.
I guess also in the jewelry business, it just hit me as well. Like if I got a fly watch on, and he asked me, "Yo, where'd I get my watch?" That makes sense of like word of mouth that's sort of like transparent, because if I have a nice watch, I'm going to wear it all the time.
Absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely.
And then you have people coming to you because of that reason. Damn.
Talk about what's sitting on the fridge right now.
What's sitting on the fridge?
We asked you beforehand to bring in a piece.
So this was like the first piece of custom jewelry that we ever made. It's like an Om, for those of you who don't know. My dad's side of the family were Hindus or whatever, so this is I always kind of wanted something like this. And so at the time, my logic for getting this made was this is for myself. We weren't at the place in time where people were placing orders for custom jewelry with me, so I was like, okay, I want to kind of have something that I can show people and say like, yeah, we're able to do this kind of stuff, right? And kind of maybe generate some interest from that. So yeah, we made this and I wore it everywhere.
So how'd you get into like the whole custom world? After like flipping, right? After flipping, how'd you get into the idea of, okay, I'm doing custom stuff now?
Well, so the first thing I'll touch on is that like the most important thing in business that I've learned, at least, is your network is number one. Like the saying, your network is your net worth, is 100% factual, right? By doing certain deals with certain guys, they introduced me to other people. You know, you shake hands and some doors open, and then all of a sudden now I know, you know, 15 people who manufacture jewelry for other jewelers, or I know wholesalers now, and kind of like once that happens, right, and you have the influx of cash flow coming from clients purchasing jewelry, you can kind of start to make some moves, right? Because before, my supply was very limited. I had to bust around the city and find, you know, who had rope chains. I remember there was one time I had a guy who really wanted a rope chain, and it was during COVID, and I'd called every day for like 3 weeks because everybody was getting money right from the government. So the pawn shops and the gold buying place, they couldn't keep anything in stock either because everybody had cash to blow. So I was waiting to get a rope chain for this guy forever. But when you have like all these connections, right, then that problem is solved. You no longer have to worry about that, right? So,
so is there ability to build a system in this, like the business? You know, like now you have a wholesaler. Then next thing is you have a guy who's going to do all your custom jewelry. Like how long did that process take?
I don't think it ever has stopped, right? Because, you know, like in any other business, you learn along the way. And the jewelry business can be, it's a very beautiful business. I love it, but it can also be a very dark, scummy, you know, shark-infested water, right? Where people are just, if they smell blood in the water, like they'll burn you for easy money, right? And I had to go through those lessons myself, dealing with dishonest suppliers and, you know, getting scammed or ripped off, right? Like even on the B2B end, it happens all the time.
Damn.
Yeah. So still now, like there's still adjustments we make, right? Like supply chain can be good from one person for a long, long time, but then, you know, a change could happen in their infrastructure in their business. They could get too busy and now turnaround time is slow, or they don't have a consistent supply of the stock that you need, right? So then you have to make adjustments on the fly, right? It's kind of, owning your own business is kind of, you're constantly solving problems, right? It's I feel like that's the majority of what we do every day, is just constantly I'm solving another problem. Right?
Putting out the fires.
Pretty much, exactly, yeah.
Do you have a story from like getting a piece or having to like finesse your way into a connection, or someone needs it urgently and you need to make some calls, certain, like you call up, I don't know, the Secret Service or something, and they're like,
call up the I don't know, but
like your defining moment.
Defining moment. I don't think we've had one, but there's definitely been a few instances where I know in the back of my mind, if I don't come through for this guy, like it's the first time we're doing a deal, right? If I don't come through for this guy, he's never going to buy anything from me ever again, and probably none of his friends are either, right? So there's always that like immense amount of pressure that like we have to perform, right? And it's unfortunate because there is a lot of moving parts in this business. Even if we were doing the manufacturing in-house, like there's a lot of things that can go wrong, right? And if there's tight deadlines, then it can be a lot of stress because there's a lot of money on the line, right? People are spending a lot of money, and you want to make sure, you know, they feel like they're getting a good service, and more importantly, that the product is going to be really good as well, right? So,
what are some of those things that can go wrong? Like what?
Oh, there's so many. I mean, you can have issues with the casting, right? Casting is the process where they take like the wax molds and they convert it into gold. Okay. It's kind of it's hard for me to explain how it works, but casting is the process of taking wax molds and turning it to gold, essentially, right? There's so many things that can go wrong with that. The casting can come out with, it's called porosity. It looks like bumps and dimples and improper, you know, finishes on a lot of the areas. At that point, you just have to remake it, right?
Like, is it an expensive process if things go wrong in that?
It can be.
Yeah.
I mean, you can crack a stone during setting. Like diamonds are very, very hard, but if you strike them at the right place, you can totally chip a stone. So like we actually, if people, you know, if you went and bought a stone online, right? You bought a $20,000 diamond or whatever, and then you just wanted me to put it in a ring for you, I'm just not going to do it. Because now I have to assume the risk that if I crack your diamond, I'm out of pocket to go replace it to make $100 setting your, it's just, you know what I mean?
Ooh, okay.
Yeah. So there's so many things that can go wrong. It's just, you know, diamonds, right? Like let's say you buy diamonds. You can order a bunch of diamonds and they come in and they're totally not what you've ordered, right? That's very common too in our business is dishonest diamond suppliers, right? You can order, you know, like I have the little chart over there, but you can order a certain quality and, you know, they'll blow smoke up your ass and tell you what you want to hear, but they'll send you something less, hoping that you're not going to catch on.
Ooh, that's shady.
Yeah, it's really bad, dude. It's really bad. So when I touch back on the network thing, like finding people that you can trust, even if you have to pay a little bit more, is worth the peace of mind, right? Like a lesson that I learned from myself is always trying to find the cheapest. You get what you pay for at the end of the day, right? There's no miracles in any industry. So it's better to just deal with somebody you trust and maybe have to pay a little bit more. Don't get ripped off, but.
Do you have a favorite story or a favorite piece that you've done where you're like, okay, this was worth it. All the struggle, like all the chaos that I had to go through, this was my favorite part.
Favorite piece. I don't think so, because I've experienced that feeling
All the
for
time.
a lot of pieces, man. Yeah,
Yeah.
a lot of pieces. So,
What's the biggest piece you've done?
like size-wise, dollar-wise?
Sure, both. Let's do both. Like size-wise, like how big can you get? Like, I don't know.
I mean,
I don't know
we
jewelry
make
that much.
pendants that are like
Gotcha.
4 inches wide, like
Wow.
full of diamonds. Like that's you're approaching rapper territory with that kind of
6'9"
jewelry,
chain
right?
kind of.
Pretty much. I mean, the 6'9" chain is massive. That's
Yeah.
probably like 7 or 8 inches,
Yeah.
but that's $30,000-$40,000 on a custom pendant, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
quite a bit of money. I've sold a few watches that were in the 6-figure range.
Wow.
So that was pretty cool. You know what I mean? To have the experience to do that
In Winnipeg?
in Winnipeg.
What
yeah.
was that deal like?
Without
I
giving
didn't
too
sell
much
the
away.
watch in Winnipeg.
Okay,
Actually, I
okay.
sold them to some people I know in the States.
Right.
But the watches were in Winnipeg. They
Yeah.
were from here. Yeah.
I just can't, like, I don't know. I'm not a huge jewelry person, to be honest with you.
Right.
Like, I have some watches that have been given down from, like, my uncles, and most of the time I'm usually rocking an Apple Watch, if I'm gonna be honest with you. You probably hate me for that. That's okay.
No judgment here, man.
Who's
I
a
own an
spy
Apple
kid?
Watch. They're great. They're great.
But in terms of, I can imagine, like, just opening a case and just having diamonds shining up at you.
What about opening a case and seeing watches?
Is this your personal collection or?
Some of these are my personal ones, but most of these we have for
God damn.
available.
Nice.
God damn.
We kind of have everything here. It's a lot of Rolexes.
Okay, walk us through what you have here.
So we mostly have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 Rolexes, 1 Cartier, and 1 AP.
Okay.
So, you have like your kind of lower end. I don't want to say lower end, but your lower end of the spectrum in price.
Sure.
Vintage stuff. So like something like this is around the $6,000, $7,000 mark, right?
Damn.
And then you have your stuff like like this, which is going to be you're bordering on 60,000.
Damn.
Yeah.
On a wrist.
On a wrist. Yeah, but feel it.
Oh, it's heavy.
Solid gold.
Solid gold.
Yeah.
Damn. Beautiful. How do you get this? Like, okay, so Rolexes right now, are they out of stock, or like, I don't know, I might be just pulling stuff out of my ass here, but I watched an interview of Kevin O'Leary talking about that it's very hard to get Rolexes
Yeah,
right now.
absolutely. It's kind of, I mean, it's your classic tale of supply and demand, right?
Okay.
You know how are you guys sneaker guys?
Little bit,
At all?
little bit.
A little bit.
Little bit,
Do you know how some Jordans for the longest time, like getting them for retail is a pipe dream,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
You have to line up for 10 days and whatever, right?
Gotcha.
It's a similar kind of story with Rolexes. Like demand through the pandemic absolutely shot through the roof, and there was issues with the supply chain, and all of a sudden, a lot of pieces weren't available, or they were available but only to certain clients, right? Like you can't really walk in off the street. There's certain models they'll sell you, but if you want a piece that resells or sells for more than retail, you're not just going to get it walking off the street. You can get lucky, but more often than not, a lot of the authorized dealers, they'll if you buy this engagement ring for your wife, or if you spend $5,000 on gift cards, or if you buy this dog shit solid gold Omega that you're going to lose 20 grand on, then we can get you the piece that you want. Maybe. You know what I mean? They play that kind of
Trying
game.
to upsell you there.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, like, I can't really blame them. Like, if I owned a Rolex authorized dealer, like, because they can't sell it for over MSRP, or they're going to lose their authorized dealer status, right?
Oh, true.
So they're trying to juice it as much as they can, because there's some watches that you can go in there and you can buy and you can turn around and make 40 grand selling it like this to a guy like
Really?
me or somebody else. Yeah.
Damn.
Can I quickly ask, have you seen all of the content on like TikTok and Instagram with the guys in New York, like
Yeah, absolutely.
Overlooking and all those?
Absolutely. Yeah.
What
Yeah.
are your thoughts on that?
At least for me, that's not the reality of our business here, and a lot of the jewelers in Canada. I mean, we don't have a 47th Street. We don't have a Diamond District in LA.
Yeah.
So there's not a lot of hustling and bustling going on where I'm, grabbing a watch and running it down the street and making 2 grand. That's like, I don't really think that happens too often. Maybe it happens there. But the point about the margins on the watches are pretty accurate. Like, you're not making 15, 20% on watches. Like, you know what I mean? If you invest 10,000 and you can make $1,000, like, that's pretty good, right? But the whole point of it is like it's pretty liquid and you can usually sell them pretty quickly, right?
Talk about the play that social media has in the jewelry game, because I feel like right now there's a whole culture built up in social media regarding jewelry. Can you touch on that a little bit and how that influences the market?
I would say the jewelry business is the most influenced by like hip hop culture.
Right.
Right? And I think we've seen hip hop culture become kind of more and more mainstream.
Yeah.
It's less like 2005 G Unit, like chain hanging down past your waistline with a car spinning rim on it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's more, I don't want to say, what's the word I'm looking for? It's more socially acceptable.
Like,
I don't know if that's the right word, but I mean, you see like everybody now wearing jewelry, right? It doesn't matter if they're, professional athletes or movie stars or whatever. Like it's become a lot more classy looking. Like it's shorter and it's kind of more stylish.
Would you say minimalist?
More, a lot of the rappers, they still wear like
It's
the
still
really
flashy.
big stuff,
Yeah.
right? But you do have like, I feel like more people wearing jewelry who potentially wouldn't have worn it 15 years ago, right?
True.
And you definitely have a lot more people interested in watches. And I think social media kind of just perpetuates that cycle of consumerism, right? By shoving it in your face every day. So I think there's a lot of people who maybe weren't watch guys that start to see them all the time and they're like, hey, yeah, like, if I make my first X amount of dollars, I think I'm going to buy myself a Rolex, right? Whereas they might not have thought that before. I don't know.
Do you have any of those dreams, or have you already achieved some of those dreams?
In what sense?
In I want that watch, or I want this thing, or if I make X amount of dollars, I'm buying a green Lamborghini parked outside. Like,
I mean, I think there's times where I'm like, I'd like to own a Ferrari maybe at some point, later in my life. I think that would be pretty cool. For a while when I was first starting out, right, like to have even one of these watches was like a total dream. I thought it would be the coolest thing ever. But the thing with material items is it's very fleeting sensation.
gotcha.
Right? Like, I don't know if I worded that correctly, but essentially, like, it's kind of the new car smell, right? You buy it, it's cool, you're looking at it, wow, all this dopamine, and then, new car smell wears off, and you're looking at it, and then you see someone else with a nice one, and you're like, oh, I kind of want that one instead, right? So I feel like I've kind of went through that cycle enough times now where it's like, we'll get new pieces in, and I'll admire them, and I like them, but I'm not really like, I need to have this watch or I need to have this car. Like it's a goal of mine because I've come to the realization that like chasing those type of things is never going to really bring me any kind of long-lasting satisfaction.
What's your take on when people say it doesn't matter if you wear a Rolex or or Apple Watch, the only thing they tell you is the time that you go to lunch?
I mean, it's valid. It's a valid statement, right? But I feel like, people buy high-end watches or even jewelry for one of two reasons mainly, right?
Yeah.
It's either to show off, right? Or it's to congratulate themselves for an accomplishment or for working hard in life, right?
Yeah.
And I feel like, you could buy yourself an Apple Watch for that, but I feel like if you're a certain caliber of earner, then like, it's not going to do it as much, right? Like,
Yeah.
You could go buy a Toyota Camry for closing a big ass deal, or you could buy a Porsche 911. You know what I mean? Like it's kind of, I feel like it's kind of on
Different
that.
levels.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And then do you deal with both sides of the spectrum with your clients as well? Like the people that come in to they want to just show off, and versus the ones who are, okay, this is like an engagement piece for my wife, or I want to get those kind of things. What's the extremes here?
I mean, you have, like you said, both ends of the spectrum, right? You have guys coming in who, probably spent 95% of every dollar they have on a piece of jewelry to portray a certain image, right?
Wow.
And then you have guys who, are coming in and they're buying something for the sake of celebrating, and they don't really, you can tell the money is not going to make or break them financially or whatever. Because I've had instances where certain people, I'll sell them something, and then often relatively quickly they'll come back and be like, hey, like, you want to buy it back? Because I kind of need the money now, right? So that's when you kind of know, like, oh, okay, maybe you maybe spent a bit out of your means or whatever, right? But yeah.
What does your business primarily look like today? So are you buying a lot of pieces, or are you doing a lot of custom work? What's the split here, and what does that look like?
I mean, we have like a lot of inventory. We have like our basic inventory of chains and assortment of rings and pendants and whatever, if you want to come in and shop, right? But we do quite a bit of custom jewelry. I think that's been huge for us the past few years, is at least when I first started doing jewelry in Winnipeg, the style was different, people were wearing like those, they call them the diamond cut chains, these big, huge square link chains and the nugget rings. And that was pretty much what all the guys were wearing. That was what they wanted, which is strange because in every other major city in the world, almost nobody's really wearing that anymore, right? It's 80s jewelry mostly. And like, I wanted our brand to be something different. I wanted it to be like a little more higher end, a little more trendy. Like, you know, what are they wearing in LA? What are they wearing in New York and Toronto, right? Like I wanted to sell that kind of stuff, which has been cool because I've seen more and more and more people kind of gravitate away from that old style of jewelry. And now they're wanting to do like, you know, a tennis chain with a custom pendant or a diamond bracelet or something that's, you know, more in line with the current times. So,
Damn.
I'm gonna ask you to reflect a little bit now. I know you don't do this really often, but as we close down the podcast, from the addiction to struggling in life, right? Overcoming self-doubt to where you are now, sitting in one of the best views in Winnipeg.
it's a 6 out of 10.
Arguably,
6 out of 10, yeah.
6 out of 10, right? What does that feel like?
I mean, I feel very lucky, you know. None of this would be possible if ultimately, like, I didn't choose to make a change in my life and get sober. Like, I haven't had a drink in almost 6 years. I haven't, like, smoked weed or zero, substance-free for 6 years. And that was the greatest decision I've ever made in my life. Like, the clarity it gave me and the drive to succeed and focus on my goals and kind of gave me some confidence back in myself is, you know, you can't put a price on that.
Yeah.
Like I said earlier, like your past doesn't define you. You are not your mistakes, right? You can rise above all the horrible things you think you may have done and, you know, become a better person and make something yourself and make your family, your friends, or even yourself proud, right? Like, I wouldn't, you know, if people are struggling, like, reach out and ask for help. Like, it doesn't matter if it's, you know, addiction or mental health stuff, or you're just going through a rut, you know, like, asking for help is not a sign of weakness. It's one of, like, the most courageous things you can do, right? And to never listen to people who tell you that you can't do something, right? Because, you know, I came from a situation where pretty much all the odds were kind of stacked against me to do something like this, and I managed okay, you know? We're building a new store, it's gonna be 1,500 square feet and like super nice, and that's like something I would have only dreamed of, and I had a lot of people who probably didn't believe in me. But if you believe in yourself, you put the hard work in, and you're consistent, and you're a good person, good things happen to you. Yeah.
Talk to me about the future of the jewelry world.
Future of the jewelry world.
Yourself. What do you said?
I mean,
you said you're opening up something. You open up a store.
Yeah. So we've been building it since November now. It's you know, I signed the lease July now, so it's quite a while ago.
Yeah.
It'll be nice. It'll still kind of be by appointment only, but we'll have a full showroom, private viewing area for your VIP clients. We'll have a goldsmithing bench in the back. We'll have a media creation room. Like, it'll be like done up to the nines. Nice. We've invested some money and some time into this, and we want it to look like really proper. And I think after that would be to expand potentially into other cities. My younger brother, he moved here from Ottawa. He's now part of the team. Nice. So it's been really awesome working with him because he's like my best friend, and just growing this thing together has been pretty cool. And you know, obviously I'm kind of always scheming up new ideas and which cities, you know, potentially have vacancy in the market, right, that we could fill. But for now, we're just focusing on Winnipeg. Yeah.
I was going to ask as well, how much does a market play a role? Like, if you were to do the same stuff that you do here in, let's say, like a New York or in LA, like
massive.
Like, how big is the market for jewelry here in Winnipeg?
The demand for jewelry here is huge. Huge.
Okay.
It's unlike anything I've ever seen before growing up in Ottawa, right?
Really?
Like,
and why do you think that is?
I'm not too sure. I think potentially the culture.
Okay.
But the amount of men wearing jewelry here is like staggering. Like, it's crazy. Our business is predominantly men. I would say maybe 70% of the jewelry we sell is men's jewelry. So, I mean, back home you'd see, you know, a couple guys wear chains, right? But here it's like, you're not somebody if you're not wearing a gold chain, right? Kind of.
Sure.
But it's also there was a big gap in the market here. There wasn't too much competition. There was maybe a couple of stores kind of selling the same type of stuff, right? And I saw an opportunity and I jumped on it. And kind of now we've seen other people enter the space and whatever. But I think if I attempted this in a city like Toronto, maybe, where the market is very saturated and, you know, there's a ton of competition, a lot of undercutting and all this type of stuff, who knows if the margin would be there to be profitable long term. But there's a few other cities that I'm thinking of that maybe don't want to drop it on here, but I think there's a good opportunity there. It depends on a few factors, right? But yeah, I think competition and how saturated the market is probably the biggest thing to look for. Yeah.
That's awesome.
Any advice you can leave our audience with in terms of whether they're pursuing entrepreneurship or, you know, wanting to chase the dream that they don't think they can yet?
Just never stop believing in yourself, and
Great song.
yeah. No, just believe in yourself, and if you have a goal, give it your all. Don't listen to people who are, you know, telling you can't do certain things in your life, because if you put your mind to things and you really hustle, you can accomplish whatever you want, right? The sky's the limit. So
Yes, sir.
Keep
Literally.
literally.
Well, thank you so much, brother, for
Thank you
coming on
guys
the
for
show.
having me.
Thank you for
I
having us
appreciate it.
here. If you haven't already, make sure to check out Kiran. We'll tag everything in the description below. If you want a piece, you know where to get it. KPS. Until next time. Peace.
Peace. That's a wrap.